IVM.
Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast supported by Pragati, a flagship media initiative of the Takshashila Institution. We're a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like to bring a fresh perspective to Indian affairs and an Indian perspective to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hi and welcome to another episode of All Things Policy. I am Mahek Nankani and I manage the Graduate Certificate Program in Health and Life Sciences at the Takshashila Institution. Today we are going to talk about Omicron, the recently discovered new variant that has been making news in the past few days. Before I introduce my guest for the day, I would like to inform you that the applications of both our GCPP and PG programs are now open. The cohort for both the programs begin on 15th January next year, and the last day to register for the programs is 8th January. To talk to us about Omicron, the possibility of a third wave, and India's steps to prepare for it, we have with us Harshit Kukreja, research analyst with Takshashila Institution. He's a doctor and has been in the frontline workforce during the past two COVID-19 waves. Hi Harshit, how are you doing?
Hi, Meg. I'm good. How are you?
I'm well too. So, before we move ahead, I would like to inform the listeners that the points discussed during this podcast are based on information and data as of 3 p.m. on 30th November 2021. So, let us begin. So, Harshit, if you see the updates in the past few days, especially like after 26th, there has been rounds of news on Omicron variant of the coronavirus. The latest update came even as WHO assessed and specified global risk from the newly discovered variant as very high. So, could you tell the listeners about what Omicron actually is, when and where was it discovered, why it has been in news, and a lot of other details?
Omicron is the newest variant which has caught our eye thanks to the vigilant South African scientist. It was previously known as B11529. World Health Organization designated it as the variant of concern on 26th of this month, that is November. First sample was collected on 9th in South Africa and reported to WHO after genetic analysis on 24th November. WHO uses Greek letters to name its variants. They have jumped from mu to Omicron, skipping Zu and Nu in between. Omicron has been raising alarm bells because it has a lot of mutations, and almost 30 mutations are on the spike proteins. Spike proteins, they basically sit on the outer layer of the virus and they help the virus penetrate host cells and cause infections. mRNA vaccines, the US vaccines Pfizer and Moderna has developed are based on these spike proteins.
Okay, so before we move on, you just spoke about how the WHO left two names in between. Any idea on why was it done?
So I'll start with the story. The Spanish influenza of 1918 did not originate in Spain. It just happened that during World War One Europe, at that time neutral Spain did not have any media censorship which was present in almost all of Europe due to war. So they reported it first, and even more than 100 years later, we call the pandemic Spanish flu, and it has all the stigma attached to it. So WHO started naming the variants as Greek letters. The Indian variant became Delta, South African variant became Omicron. Z was kept to not stigmatize particular communities and culture, and Z is also quite common surname in Asia. New sounds similar to new in a lot of languages, so it would have become just another new variant instead of this specific variant. And Mehak, interestingly, do you know how many letters are there in the Greek alphabet?
I'm not like extremely sure, but I think it's somewhere near 25 or something.
Quite a good guess. It's 24, and we have already used 15 of them. There are 9 remaining, and hopefully, this COVID will get over before we have to switch to another language.
Yeah, I hope it does. Like, even 15 is quite a number. So now we have spoken on how Omicron is a new variant, but could you elaborate on what variants actually are? And I remember, like in the beginning, you spoke about how it was categorized as a variant of concern. So, are there actually categories which are officially done by WHO? Are there any other categories than variants of concern?
A variant is the virus with mutations in its genetic code. In some cases, WHO designates the new variants as either variants of concern or variants of interest due to their possible health effects, effects on the world. So they have two categories. First is variants of interest. This is the variant with reduced neutralization by antibodies, maybe reduced efficacy of treatments, changed diagnostic impact, increase in transmissibility or severity. And then there is variant of concern. These are the variants with clear clinical correlation evidence of an increase in transmissibility, severe disease severity, reduced effectiveness of treatments or vaccines, or diagnostic detection failures. It currently includes alpha, beta, gamma, delta. Delta was the variant which was in second wave in India, and now Omicron.
Oh, thanks for the information. Like I wasn't aware of that. So I don't know, like since it's your first time at ATP, and I'm quite sure that our listeners wouldn't know that before you joined Takshashila, you were working on ground, being on duty as a frontline worker. And it would be actually great if you could let the listeners know about your first-hand personal experience, especially during the second wave, because it was much more disastrous than the first one. And we, of course, know that there was a massive shortage of beds, there was lack of oxygen supplies, and for that matter, even human resources. So, and you've seen it all, right? You've seen it for many, many continuous days. So, how was your experience, and what does it tell us about the public health infrastructure of the country?
So I worked in a large government hospital in Delhi. It was not a good time to work. As compared to the first wave, the second wave, the Delta variant was way more brutal. First wave, we had mostly the elderly, the vulnerable, the immunocompromised patients dying. We could not save them. The second wave spared no one. I have stood helpless as healthy people, perfectly healthy people with no comorbidities, as young as 18, die because there was nothing that I could do or could be done. I have people in my family, my close friends die because there was nothing more I could do. There were people dying at the gates of the hospital because the hospital did not have enough oxygen to be able to take more people in. There was a clear paucity of beds, staff, medicine. Things could have been done much better by the government. We are clearly not even now in a better position to handle the next potential wave.
So, like, are you trying to say that if a possible third wave hits us in near future, then we as a nation are not prepared to treat sick people in the country?
So, in simpler words, yes. I don't think, and most of the experts would agree, that we are not in a better position than as we were when the second wave was here. It hit us. We don't have the capacity to treat so many people simultaneously, even at a very basic treatment protocol level, even if we want to provide them basic medicines and not very cutting edge treatments.
That's actually quite scary. And so when second wave hit us, it was somewhere in April, and the positivity rate, especially during those 2-3 months, was extremely high. And one can actually say that we as a nation weren't obviously prepared to serve and to save and treat actually so many sick people. And so, talking about numbers, do you have any idea on the data for the number of people who have been infected by the new variant across the world? And of course, we know that the numbers are changing and getting updated every hour. But what is the most recent update that you're aware of?
The number of confirmed cases right now of the Omicron variant are somewhere under 1,000. Almost all of Europe, southern part of Africa, Australia, Japan, and a lot of other countries have now confirmed that they have the variant. In India, although there is no official confirmed cases, I can say with almost reasonable certainty that Omicron is here. We'll find the variant eventually when we start doing sequencing on a lot of more samples. We only sequence somewhere around 0.2% of our total samples.
Thanks, Harshit. We will now take a quick break. Listeners, we'll get back to you after this short break.
Your computer can be compromised in many ways, and all cyber attacks ultimately affect your files and apps by accessing everything that's on your PC. Intel vPro keeps you safe from cyber attacks using the Intel Hardware Shield, which has 3 groups of capabilities. First, advanced threat protection, quickly detecting issues like ransomware and crypto mining. Second, below the OS security, identifying unauthorized changes to hardware. And lastly, application and data protection, preventing malware injections. So, secure your organization's productivity with Intel vPro's hardware-based security. Visit intel.in/IT heroes to know more. Remember, Intel vPro is built for business.
Hi, listeners. Welcome back after a quick short break. So, in this episode of All Things Policy, we are discussing about the new coronavirus variant, Omicron, and we have with us Harshit Kukreja, who's been telling us about the recent updates, the variant, where was it found, and the numbers around the world. So, Harshit, before the break, we have spoken about how a lot of countries across the world have confirmed the cases, and they have given some official number about the cases of Omicron in their countries. And so we know that the transmissibility rate of Delta variant, which actually was there in the second wave, was extremely high, and moreover, it was extremely severe, which caused so many deaths across the nation. So, what do you know of the new Omicron variant? Is it even more transmissible? And what do we know about the severity as of now?
There are preliminary signs that Omicron is driving the new wave in South Africa. Health officials are looking particularly at a region called Gauteng. In just 1 week, test positivity rate increased from 1% to 30%. That is incredibly fast. Initial estimates peg the variant to be as high as 5 times more infectious than Delta, although we are unclear about severity. This is all a very initial assessment. It would be much more clearer in about 2 to 4 weeks.
So, whatever data we have as of now, and of course, this is not Indian data, the data is across many countries around the globe, we somehow know that it is extremely infectious, and there's a great possibility that people will get infected. I'm just unsure, and I would like to know more about the reinfection possibility. Do we have any evidence on it as of now?
According to the latest reports by WHO, which came out today, the variant has an increased possibility of breakthrough infections. That is, it there is decreased immunity even after complete immunization or a recent previous infection, although the severity of these breakthrough infections is still very, very unclear.
So we still are at a very preliminary stage, and we still can't confirm that India is going to be hit with a third wave.
So this looks like a very real possibility. This depends on if the new variant is more is able to overtake the Delta variant. If it can overtake the Delta variant, a third wave in India is a very, very real possibility.
This actually makes me wonder. First of all, it makes me extremely anxious about the possibility on the situation in next couple of days or a couple of weeks. But it also makes me wonder how safe we are. I mean, we know that recently 50% of the country's population has at least been partially vaccinated. So what do you think? Does that make us safe? I mean, what is the worst case possibility? Are the current vaccines, both the vaccines, effective enough to protect Indians against the Omicron variant if and whenever it hits us?
So we do not have enough data, leave enough. We have very scarce data about Omicron and the two Indian vaccines, that is Covishield and Covaxin. We have statements from, for instance, the Moderna CEO, and I'm quoting him on this. He said it's going to be a material drop. He's talking about the effectiveness of the vaccine to the Omicron variant as compared to Delta one. Although he also adds that we have to wait for more data. Different sources say that Moderna can get a new vaccine approved in about 6 weeks in response to any variant. Although, when the timeline of it reaching us is multiples long, it would be months, not weeks.
This actually comes down to the point: are we actually being in a position to detect the new Omicron variant? Like I was recently, like a few hours ago, I was recently reading this government report which said that both RT-PCR and rapid antigen tests are effective enough to detect the variant. But do you think they are? And do you think both RAT and RT-PCR can actually suffice the situation?
There are reports coming in from South Africa and uh, the United Kingdom which say they're not very sure that maybe rapid antigen tests are not as effective as they were in Delta or in the first wave, but RT-PCRs are holding their ground. They are being helpful to us, and there's a good thing with this variant. Usually, the sample is sent for genetic analysis, and then we know what the variant is. In Omicron, we have a mutation in the S gene, which leads to the S gene not being detected in the RT-PCR test, which points us to a strong possibility that the sample is the Omicron variant. Instead of waiting for gene analysis and then getting an answer, RT-PCR could point us in the right direction.
And like, what about travel bans? I know like India has started to put some restrictions. They have not banned, but they have categorized some high risk countries, some low risk countries, and they've started to put some restrictions on people coming in. What do you think that in should India actually cancel all international flights right now, ban international air travel, and do you think it's the right option, especially from South African countries and countries which have confirmed that they have cases of the new variant?
So right now, a lot of countries have confirmed they have the new variant. It's like almost all of Europe, half Africa, some part of North America, Japan, Australia, and India also has that variant. So it would not be advisable to ban flights, but we could test them repeatedly and maybe have a quarantine period because the variant has already been being introduced into the country. There's no way we couldn't, like, we cannot pick it out. It's already in the country, it's already spreading. The economic damage of stopping international travel would be way more than the benefit we get from not the the some cases getting into the country.
But as of the official reports by the government, they state that none of the people who have been recently infected are because of the new variant. So do you think don't you think like right now it's the right time just to stop all air travel, especially international air travel, so that we actually can't mitigate and like prevent any of people who have been infected with new variant from coming into the country?
So the thing is, the variant is flying under the radar. We have not detected it. It is in the country. You cannot now at this stage stop it from coming into the country. It is in there, and stopping people from outside, stopping all international travel will not help.
Oh, okay. And so, like, what do you think then India should do right now, if not ban air travel or do take strict actions right away? What do you think that the initial steps as a country we can take, both at the national and the state level, so that we prevent the variant and the cases to rise very high?
Currently, our existing public health measures are working against this variant. There are no reports which suggest otherwise. Mask work, social distancing work, ventilating indoor spaces work, vaccinations work. What we can do is increase our vaccinations manifold, look at the possibility of booster doses, increase our genomic surveillance, give out INSAGOG data, that is the body which is assessing and controlling and disbursing of the genetic analysis data of COVID-19 out in public domain so that the people who are not in the body can look it up and the data can be used for further analysis.
So you spoke about how there is a need for India to increase its vaccination rate. And before this podcast, I was just reading on how India has promised all of these countries with the new variant that they will help them with the vaccination and everything. Do you think now, when maybe there is a possibility of third wave hitting the country and like hardly 35% of the people of the nation are fully vaccinated, so do you think right now it's a time to help other countries or think about ourselves?
So, unvaccinated people anywhere are a threat to the world unless, if we want COVID to go away, helping others should not come at our cost. We have to increase our capacity. We have to increase vaccination rates. We have to reduce whatever hesitancy we have. We have to even look at possibilities of third doses, because a lot of people who are in direct contact, who are frontline, who are vulnerable, have had the vaccine from 6 months.
And like, what about lockdown? So, like, in like one of your previous statements, you said that India needs to practice social distancing more if we need to be secured from a possible third wave. So, do you think a partial lockdown at this moment is one of the solutions that the government at the various capacities at various levels should start taking?
Some kind of restrictions on social activities, some kind of restriction on schools, some kind of restrictions on places which can work virtually is needed, but we cannot have, as a country, we cannot afford another lockdown. We are not strong economically, so people would die of hunger instead of dying of COVID.
Okay. Thanks, Harshit. Actually, it was quite an informative podcast, and I know we are still at a very, very initial stage, and nothing could be can be confirmed as of now. But it it's very necessary for like us to keep debating about what should be done, what are our past mistakes, and how can we save the country from a situation as similar to what happened a few months ago in the second wave. So before we sign off, I just want you to let me know if you have any concluding remarks on the current situation and if we have a hopeful situation. Can we hope for a situation where we do not face a new wave?
So, predictions for epidemics, for pandemics, is a is not an very exact science. We cannot make predictions at this stage. We had people, we had expert groups, we had government expert groups, we have world bodies who were not looking at a possibility of a second wave post the first wave. So be ready for the worst and hope for best. But as long as the virus has people it can spread to and mutate, there is always a possibility of a different variant, even if Omicron does not seem as scary as it is looking right now. There is a possibility of a different variant coming to India and making a very, very bad public health crisis.
Thanks, Harshit. Thanks for being our guest for the day. I hope your first podcast for ATP was nice. I would also want to thank our listeners for tuning in. For more policy topics and interesting topics, please keep listening to All Things Policy.
If you liked our show, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can tune into them on the IVM Podcast app, ivmpodcast.com, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow IVM on social media. The handle is @IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And hey, if you'd like to dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs, check us out at our Twitter handle @TakshashilaINST or our website takshashila.org.in.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the Habit Coach, Ashton talks to Garima Pandey. She is the co-founder of Wandering Jane. They discuss solo travel and how it's perceived. Does the story of a fake lawyer on the run sound interesting to you? Then definitely tune into Misconduct. Raghavi and Nisha discuss the story of Ceci Xavier. On KBCD, Farad and Sunitru discuss how sometimes people don't feel inclined towards sex, some possible causes, and how it's okay to feel so occasionally. On Press Decode, Sarah and Prafula are joined by author and journalist Sandeep Roy. They discuss the no stags policy that many bars and restaurants follow across the country. Do check out Hanswani, the story Tirthathan talks to us about the aspiration and challenges of widowed women. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also, do remember, go check out our website, ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, to get a list of all of our YouTube channels. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors on the network this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda, HDFC Mutual Fund, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Intel, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
If you love cricket, listen up. The Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast is here for you. Hosted by DJ, Varun, and me, Ashwin, we bring a fun, fresh fan's point of view to talking all things cricket. Sometimes it's just the three of us, sometimes we have guests, including current and former international cricketers. For new episodes every week, check out the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast on the IVM app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.